And a very good morning. This is Mick Mulligan coming up on 7 minutes past 10. And I'm joined on line 2 by travel expert Eoghan Corry, who's always a delight to talk to. Hi, Eoghan.
That's a good introduction. You put me in good humour for the day. Not everyone says that about me.
It's great. It's great when you talk to a person who has command of the subject topic. I think, as much as this has been waited for, the mask requirement on European flights and in airports being removed on Monday is a certain milestone in the pandemic, I suppose, in the 2.5 years. It's about 2 years ago since we predicted masks would become a part of our everyday lives. Now it seems we are slipping the mask.
Yeah, but don't put your collection of masks in the attic yet. We have a little bit to go on this because what the two European agencies, the ECDC and the ECAC, one of them, the ECDC, collates the medicine statistics, the figures, the other one looks after aviation regulation and aviation safety.
Sorry, Eoghan, we're losing you there. Can you move, or maybe we can call you back?
I will try moving.
That's clear now.
Yeah, okay. And the two European agencies yesterday said that from Monday, countries can remove the requirement for masks, but it's now back with the destinations and with the airlines. And it's quite clear it's going to be a little bit more complicated than just parking the mask.
Okay, so if you're going to an airport, and it's an Irish airport, and you're leaving from Cork, Dublin, or Shannon, or Waterford, or wherever you're leaving from, Knock maybe, you don't have to wear a mask from Monday anymore.
No, it's not clear as that. We have to wait for the Irish aviation authorities to make that clear. Oddly enough, masks are still mandatory in the airports, but they aren't being worn. You'll go through Dublin or Cork Airport and you'll get lots of announcements about them. But where it is being enforced, and enforced rigidly, is you're not getting on a flight without a mask. That applies in countries where they're less rigorous about masking, as well as the ones that have a lot of masking regulations. You will be at the boarding gate denied. It's happened to me in Dublin Airport that people have come to me looking for masks. Usually I have a supply of them, but I'm not advertising the fact to say they have been refused boarding, denied boarding on Ryanair or Air Lingus. It doesn't make any difference. Now, what we've seen in the last few weeks, and this goes back to Easter, some of the listeners will remember a judge in Orlando effectively overturning America's aviation masking policy. Internal flights within America, the passengers are able to fly without masks. And some of the airlines have said if the destination does not require masking, we'll allow you board. Finnair is an example, Brussels is another example. But Ryanair and Air Lingus are still enforcing masking, and this is important. Even this weekend, they will be enforcing masking, and when it comes to Monday, it will be really dependent on the destination you go to. Looking through the small print of what we saw yesterday, that statement yesterday, the countries that have a masking requirement on public transport when you get there are the ones where you would still require a mask to fly to. Examples of that would be Austria, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Estonia, France, Germany, Greece, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Portugal and Spain. Portugal and Spain, huge for us. They're really important destinations. So it is a case that while this isn't the end, it's the beginning of the end, as the great Sean O'Casey quote that was swiped by Winston Churchill goes. By the summer, I'd expect things will be a lot clearer. But really, Monday is not Liberation Day for masks on aviation yet. Okay,
that's a good term, Liberation Day. So are you saying that if the destination is a masked destination, Ryanair and Aer Lingus will enforce masks on the flight, or only when you land?
They will be enforced on the flight as well. And it's not just a mask destination, it's a mask on public transport destination.
Okay.
To give an example, Brussels enforces masks on public transportation. The rest of Belgium does not. So you're also looking at very complicated situations where, what we've seen during COVID is local regions adopting more severe policies than the national government. And we had a situation, listeners might remember, where Tenerife had a different policy from Gran Canaria in terms of their COVID masking restrictions. What we'll see now is the airline following the national policy, the Reopen EU app, which is a really important app to have on your phone because it's updated most frequently of all the apps, and it's free. There are lots of people charging for information, but this is an EU initiative. That's the one to keep an eye on, whether you require masks when you get there. And if you're flying there, in theory, Ryanair will allow you not to wear a mask on the flight. That will be implemented from Monday, I'm assured of that, by Ryanair. Aer Lingus are looking for something different. They're looking for a clearer direction from the Irish government as to what our policy on masking in aviation is, because Irish airlines are subject to Irish aviation authorities, not European ones.
Okay, so all of this really takes account of the latest developments in the progression of the pandemic, or the dying off of the pandemic, but in particular the levels of vaccination, and you would hope now the levels of naturally acquired immunity in the population.
You see, we fly once a day, or fly back in a fortnight. So the cabin crew are flying all day long from country to country, some of them with high levels of incidence, the data that you've just referred to, some of them with lower levels of incidence. So the cabin crew unions, airlines, are going to be looking at their staff and saying, well, if there's a general policy of dropping masks, we're not putting our staff in danger. We're not putting people into even, the COVID is no longer killing at the level that it did, thankfully, back in 2020. But a COVID absence can cause havoc with rostering. So from an airline point of view, from a cabin crew point of view, they will be dragging their heels, are very cautious not to allow passengers to remove masks willy-nilly. So what we see, and let's reiterate what happened yesterday, two agencies, ECDC and ACAC, said from Monday, individual countries can remove the requirement for masks, individual airlines can remove the requirement for masks, but it's back in their court, and it will be the airlines that will decide in the end.
Okay, lots of people go to the national airlines of countries. For instance, you might go to Emirates if you're going to Dubai. You might go to Qatar Airways if you're flying to Doha. You might go on to, if you're flying to Abu Dhabi, you go on to that national airline to look for the masking or the COVID cert requirements. Is there a central travel resource where people, if you're going to Portugal, going to Spain, things might be different, where you can find out what you need and whether you need a PCR or how long your cert needs to be, how old it needs to be valid?
Okay, the best one for Europe is, as I say, reopen EU, but that only applies to the EU27. The best one internationally is IATA, it's sort of the FIFA of aviation. And the real problem has been, since things started changing and being updated, that some of the websites, even the very good designated ones, have been slower to pick up the information. As I say, you're very, very sound advice. Go to the national airline. They're usually the first to learn. Aer Lingus will be the first to learn. If they, at the time we had locator form restrictions in Ireland, they were the first to learn about it and put it on their website. So very good rule of thumb. If you're looking at a destination, go to the national airline for that destination. If there isn't a national airline, as in the case of the United States, go into the individual airline website, because we have certainly, since the changing of the masking regulations in America, we have different policies by the different airlines, and obviously internal flights have a different policy from international flights. Okay,
here's a cheeky question. Is Aer Lingus our national airline, or is Ryanair now?
That's a good question, because Ryanair are by far the market share leader. They were about 4 percentage points ahead of Aer Lingus in the market share out of Ireland before the pandemic. They've increased that to about 8 percentage points.
Headquartered in Dublin as well.
Headquartered in Dublin, and Michael O'Leary, of course, makes great. He does declare he is Ireland's national airline. Aer Lingus is privatised. There is no government ownership. It's actually owned out of Spain. So anyone who wants a little bit of the jousting that goes on between Ryanair and Aer Lingus, just look at the two Twitter accounts when they go to battle every now and again, and it's good fun because they're both very cheeky.
Okay. Now, we've heard from government sources that there is a massive backlog in the processing of passports. What advice do you give to people who are planning for holidays? Even if you're planning for June, July, August, you need to be in the passport queue by now, don't you?
Very much. Jump early. Now, the demographics or the data of passports is very interesting. The peak month is always May. Historically, May is when people have, they might have booked in January, but May is when they started looking at expiry dates. And April is the 2nd, June is the 3rd. If you go down to December, January, very low levels. Really worrying. We had this problem back in December and January. There's another really worrying thing. If you're in the system and it's coming close to your takeoff date, you have no facility for going into the emergency system. There isn't a facility for applying for an emergency meeting or an emergency interview, and that is denied to you if you're already in the system. What we've seen happen is people have been putting in their departure date, and the clock is wound down, but a lot of people have been getting the passport right probably a day before, when the stress levels are running very high. They are being delivered, but there's a huge backlog. There's nothing can be done to switch it on to clear it very quickly. There are a couple of very important advice points, though. One of the things that the pandemic created is the number of people whose passport had run out beyond 5 years. Now, it sounds a long time, but if you've lost 3 years to COVID, it isn't. And people went to apply online and found that because their previous passport has expired by 5 years, they no longer can apply online. There aren't problems applying online. Remember, it's where if you have to go through the system of looking for effectively a new passport, that's where the problems are. The other major problem is newborn babies. One of the things that has changed is that the children's passport is now a 5-year passport, not a 3-year passport. That happened a couple of years ago, but that's a really big, very, very important for those with families. And with a newborn baby, you do not have to wait for your PPS number before you apply. A lot of people thought that was the case. It takes a while to get the PPS number, and then it takes a long while to get your passport. As soon as the baby is born, put the passport application in, and those people listening this morning who haven't yet got a PPS number for their newborn, get the passport application in now. There's a big backlog. It's going to take a while to clear it, but there's no quick fix for this, really. The passport is a hugely important document. I've got lots of personal correspondence saying, can I travel with a newborn baby? Without a passport? Absolutely not. That's what passports are for, with child trafficking and all of that. It's a valuable document. The Irish passport gets you into one of the most powerful passports in the world. It gets you to 187 countries without a visa, and they can't really be hurried, they can't really be speeded up for the issuing of such an important legal document.
Okay, good advice there. Now, in holidaying in general, Eoghan, we're seeing, the cruise liners are coming back into Cove. The cruise industry itself is advertising heavily. The flights are full. They're not as cheap as they used to be, but the hotels here as well, despite having the extended 9% VAT regime, don't seem to be coming down in price. Are we pricing ourselves out of the staycation now?
Bit of chasing of margin going on. The biggest price pressure is on car hire. It's quite, the car hire industry normally works where they buy a lot of big fleet in January, sell it off at the end of the year, make a lot of profit July, August, and sustain a loss sometimes through April, May. What they did was they got caught so badly in 2020 that their fleet buying is way down this year. So car hire prices is the biggest single price issue affecting holidays. I know people who would normally look at the price of a flight, then the price of the hotel, then the price of the car hire. They're looking at the price of the car hire first and building their holiday around that. The hotel beds issue, there's a bit of chasing of margin because hoteliers, first of all, have the sustained losses, and also they're facing the huge price increases that all of us are facing for heating, home heating oil, all of that sort of thing. The seats were interesting because there was certainly, when a very ambitious inventory went into the system, a lot of seats went into the system, there seemed to be a lot of chasing of margin. for July and August. Now, I noticed that July prices have slipped down a little bit. That means that they weren't getting the prices that they were expecting. The way it works is computer makes a decision. If a certain number of seats haven't been sold 2 months in advance, a few more are released at a lower price. That's the way it works. Nobody's actually scratching their head over this. The computer is built to do that. But August price is still running quite high. With such capacity in there, I would be surprised if better prices didn't show up to somewhere. Keep an eye on new destinations. Keep an eye on places. There's a couple of interesting new destinations out of Dublin, not so many out of Cork, but a few interesting destinations like Alghero and Sardinia, Nîmes in France, and Madeira in Portugal have all they're new to the system, and they're generally new to the system tends to get not to attract the level of bookings, and the prices can be cost a little bit lower. The home holiday market always complains about this, but they will charge what they can get. It's really the market decides the price, and what tended to happen, particularly after the shock of the global financial recession, is that Irish hotels in particular went after a sort of a higher end market where our second biggest inbound destination is the United States, and the level of the product. First of all, there was a higher end level of product put into the market, so even home holiday makers will find they're paying a little bit more than they'd expect to. But the second thing is that the very more basic 2-star stuff, the stuff that would have been trendy in the 80s and 90s that is no longer trendy. Listeners will be able to name hotels the length and breadth of the country and towns that everybody used to go to in the 80s and 90s and just didn't stay with the game, didn't keep investing. We have the Ukrainian refugee situation taking up quite a few of those beds. So a squeeze from both sides there. I'm not sure if we will see home holiday levels at the hotel side coming down to the level that the market would like. But certainly they have been reporting bookings have been quite strong. The big problem with hotels has been service levels and staffing.
Oh, and on this, the first anniversary of the hacking attack to the HSE, is there any personal tip or hack, to abuse the cliche, that a person can use when booking a flight? You often hear if you book a Wednesday morning, late Tuesday night at 2:30, you get the computer dumping availability. Are there any personal hacks you can do to ensure the best fare is achieved by you?
Saturday night, midnight, that's when the prices come down. About 6 weeks to go, the computer will make a decision. We've only sold a certain percentage at this at this high price, so let's incentivize by putting 7 or 8 or 20 seats in at a lower price. Sometimes you go in a minute to midnight, it's higher than when you go a minute past. Often you go in, it's gone up as well in the other direction. That is very basic. The airlines have become much more sophisticated by the month through the pandemic, and as they're watching how the return to flying comes. So it's not really easy. It's like trying to beat the bookie. It's not that easy to work out a way of getting a few bob off your flight. The main hack, for want of a better word, is exactly what I said. Keep an eye on places that there's a lot of capacity, that there are competitor airlines, sometimes too much capacity. Croatia is an example. We have new routes into Croatia this year. Croatia hit with the double whammy. They're very dependent on the Russian market. None of those Russians are coming, so the beds will be freed up by the absence of Russians, and the extra capacity out of Ireland will give you a little bit of leeway there. Our new routes, as I say, places like Alghero and Madeira,
and Sardinia, they're
all things to watch.
Our most popular routes, I suppose, are once again the Canaries, south of Spain, Portuguese Algarve.
Without a doubt, Malaga, Faro. It's interesting. Spain books stronger than Portugal, and that's quite one of the more interesting things that's happened this year. It might all rectify itself July, August. Certainly big with families, but the trunk routes the huge numbers of flights that we have are, as you say, to Malaga, to Faro, to Palma de Mallorca. The Canaries, Lanzarote and Gran Canaria are our two big ones. Internationally, if you look at the stats going into the going into Canary Islands, Gran Canaria is the number one market for almost every country except Ireland. Lanzarote is the number one for Ireland. It's a particular love affair we have with them. If you want to go down, then Tenerife, less popular, and Fuerteventura, quieter, more beachy, all of that tends to be where the least people go and where the best prices are got, not just in flight-wise, but also on the ground. But as I say, Greece is an interesting one as well. That's showing up quite well in the bookings this year. They do what they do very well. They're very good at the family market, and we have a couple of new routes into Greece.
Okay, I've got a text that says, I go to Portugal now. It's a little more expensive, but the food is by far superior to what we get as standard fare in Spain. Will that be correct? You're going to get me in so much trouble. You can't say. I'm going to get me saying that the Italians can cook and the Portuguese can, or the Spanish can cook. The reality is that the quality of food has hugely increased. You know, there was Europe of 20 years ago. It was very much feel the wit. What we've seen is everybody chasing local produce, trying to differentiate themselves on food, because back in the 90s, food was not a reason you decided to go somewhere. Suddenly it has become, just look at our television sets, what used to be travel programs like No Frontiers and Wish You Were Here, they've all gone. We now have travel programs masquerading as food programs. Sure.
Food has become a decision maker. And when food becomes a decision maker, it leads to decision. You've got this amazing inventiveness, and there's no shortage of farmers and wine producers and olive growers and all of that around you in Portugal and Spain in a way that you don't get in more Northern European destinations. The other really important thing is hugely famous regions for their food, and you've instanced Portugal, the Alentejo region in Portugal has by far the best food, the best wine, although Porto Douro Valley will compete with that. But they are the region that get the least tourists, and they have, as a result, the best best accommodation for prices. And of course, the Portuguese road system, a bit like our road system, got huge investment. So it no longer takes 6 hours to drive to
across the Algarve.
Yeah. It's down to 1.5. You know.
Finally, Eoghan Corry, travel expert, because we're talking for quite a long time now. What's the situation in Dublin Airport? What are the queues down to? Because a lot of people will be leaving, even Cork people, a lot of them will be going long haul or going on their holidays from Dublin Airport.
The queue times are brilliant. They're excellent at the moment, but don't count on them. You're talking 5-10 minutes to get through security queues today. It can still slide up to an hour. The reason it can slide up to an hour is COVID absences, and rostering is a nightmare because they're already short-staffed. Now, this is a shared problem. Everybody says Dublin Airport has terrible security queues, but right across Europe, the Council of Airports across Europe issued a statement last week saying that security queues is an international problem, and we have queues of, in some cases 3 or 4 hours in airports, smaller regional airports, where if there's a big number of COVID absences, there's no real place for them to turn. So it is a big problem. It's not gone away. It's fine at the moment, but don't count on it. All right.
So the 4 hour waits in Dublin Airport are over now?
Yeah, there were never really were to 4 hours, unless you're counting the check-in bag as well. The advice still is 2.5 hours for the short haul, 3.5 hours for long haul. I would stick firmly to that. Hopefully you'll breeze through and you'll have a nice, pleasant cup of coffee on the side. As I said at the beginning, always a pleasure. Eoghan Corry, thank you for joining us on the programme. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.